Hello, my name is Angelica, and this is the Angelica Unfiltered channel where I talk about health, wellness, weight loss, but mostly fat acceptance. I was getting so many goddamn ads for the Your Fat Friend film documentary by Jeanie Finlay, so I decided to bite the bullet, spend the $12 to rent on Vimeo for 72 hours, watch it for y'all, and now summarize it. I did do a reaction, but it was copyrighted, so I went ahead and posted it for members only. So if you want to join my membership, it's $1.99 a month, and there is a 3-parter, so you can watch all of those if you actually want to see what happened and you don't want to give Aubrey Gordon a penny. And if you're curious, I am wearing some labradorite earrings and my labradorite toggle necklace from my business, Rebirth Jewelry. Use code YouTube10 to save 10% off, but let's get into it. This is my second sugar-free Red Bull of the day. We need some caffeine to get through this bullshit, okay? And I'm looking at my computer right here to see my notes, which are about 20 pages on Google Docs. I watched this film 3 times. So at the beginning of the film, we see some water, and then we see a random fat lady floating in the water, you know, like how a child does in the summer when they feel attention starved from their parents, you know, to see if anyone is gonna check on them and see if they're alive. Keep this in mind. There is this theme of water throughout the whole film. While we're seeing this fat lady pretend to drown, Aubrey is reading the beginning of one of her works that is Just Say Fat. And I shall read it to you now. Just say fat, not curvy, or chubby, or chunky, or fluffy, or more to love, or big guy, or full-figured, or big-boned, or queen size, or husky, or obese, or overweight. Just say fat. Then Aubrey starts to talk about her first article that came out, which was February 18th, 2016, and it was titled, A Request from Your Fat Friend. This letter was originally written to a thin friend because, in quotes, she wanted her thin friend to know the ways in which her experience as a thin woman differed from my experience as a fat person. So she starts reading the letter that she wrote to her friend in a very somber tone, and at this time, I did the calculation, Aubrey wrote this letter when she was 32 years old. I am 28 years old right now, and I could not imagine writing this. So there is more to this letter, but I'm just gonna read you basically what was in the documentary. I mean, it is a whole article. I'll have everything linked down below if you are so curious and want to read everything by yourself. So this is all quote from here. I need you to listen closely. I need you to believe me when I tell you what happens. I need you to say the word fat about me, because I am. I am a size 26. Fat enough that some stores for fat people don't carry my size. Fat enough that some doctors will refuse to see me. Every decision about bodies, whether in the media or amongst friends, is about how to avoid the horrible fate of looking like me. I need you to hear that all this hurts and happens all the time. I know that this stuff is hard to talk about, but whenever I talk about fat, I'm not talking about feelings or self-esteem or body image issues or inner strength. I am talking about the way individuals and institutions treat me and people who look like me. I need you to acknowledge that you and I have different experiences because I am fat. I need you to consider your audience. When you say you hate your body for being so fat, that you are afraid of becoming fat, or when you say that you shouldn't have eaten lunch or dessert, or when you announce the New Year's resolutions to lose 5, 10, 25 pounds, you are saying you don't want your body to end up like mine. Your feelings are real and true and valid, and you still should not say them to the fattest person you know. So after she crafted that up, she asked a different friend to proofread it because she wanted to make sure she didn't sound like a jerk. That friend was like, no, this is like really good, and actually you should put this online for people to read. She creates an account called Your Fat Friend because she wanted to remain anonymous when she posts about all these different fat topics online. In the first week, that letter got 30,000 views, and seeing that success really motivated her to continue writing. So now there is a B-roll clip of her in the water. It looks more of like a hot tub situation, and then it kind of transitions into clips of her swimming as a kid. She said she loved swimming when she was little and it made her feel so free and liberated, and like there's like no problems in the world when she was swimming. And she says that she was on the swim team and did competitive swimming in elementary and middle school. Jeanie, the filmmaker, says, do you swim now? You know, like it seems like it's so important in your life. And she's like, no. Aubrey says that she doesn't swim anymore because it's too much work. She knows that people will like gawk at her and say things about her body and, you know, like whatever she's wearing. I'm gonna try and keep my opinions to the end, but it's so hard not to just be like, you know, if you love fucking swimming so much, then why don't you do it? Like, I just feel like she's so consumed with worrying about what other people think of her. So that was like the introduction. So now we have part 1. We're starting to get to know Aubrey a little bit more. She starts to talk about like situations when she would call herself fat, and you know, when people call themselves fat, people are always like, oh no, you're not fat. And she's like, yeah, you have eyes. I said I'm fat, not lazy, stupid, smelly, or unlovable. Like, what are we gonna do about it? Not much to do. I've tried everything, and you know, here we are. Kind of implying like she's tried so hard to lose weight in the past, but she's never been able to lose weight successfully, and she's just kind of like stuck the way that she is. You know, because being super morbidly obese is all because of genetics. She starts to talk about her work history. At the time of filming, she worked at a nonprofit to help people to register to vote. Before then, she advocated for trans healthcare and LGBTQIA plus rights for about 10 years. While she is talking about this, she is showing photos from different protests and her at work. And of course, you know, she has to make everything about being fat. So there's this poster that's like fat solidarity and a unicorn on it. It's on the screen, you can look at it. Like, you know, always gotta be about fatness. God forbid we do anything else. Then she says this quote, when people say you can't change how the world works, I'm like, you for sure can. Kind of talking about like how she knows that the world can change and adapt, and because she has seen progression in society when advocating for like trans healthcare, LGBTQIA plus rights, and, you know, registering people to vote, things can get better, but people don't see that. And I think she's kind of implying that like she's gonna change the world and how we view fatness, because she's already made so much change. So now she starts blogging on her MacBook while sitting in the car, and she's talking about her motivation for creating her blog and writing. And she says, fat activism is a way of disrupting ideas that we've held on to for so long. It's about turning them on their head. My aim is to provoke people to question the things that they always thought were right. I want them to change the way that they treat the fat people in their lives. Which I think is interesting, because from my perspective, it seems like she's writing for other fat people, but she thinks that by writing, someone that hates fat people is gonna read it and change their mind. I don't know. And then a montage of different magazine covers, you know, body pictures of belly rolls, donuts, recipes, before and after shots are on the screen to show diet culture and like how it's evolved and how it shows up in so many different forms. Then Aubrey pretends to exercise by walking around a lake with donut leggings on. And then she says this, which is a quote, and she's referring to diet culture. It's in so many conversations, just like the water we all swim in every day. Water, swimming. Keep that in mind. The belief that someone can assess your health simply by looking at you is deeply ingrained in our society. Fat is seen as unhealthy, and it's our duty to be as healthy as possible. Many people believe all of this without question, despite all the scientific evidence to the contrary, and they hate fat people for it. Then she starts to complain about how horrible it is to be a fat person. In most physical spaces, never anticipates her size or weight, you know, being super morbidly obese. She talks about how theater seats and bus seats can be very tough. She talks about how there are these rental bikes in Portland that she would love to ride on, but she is over the weight limit. Why are there birds literally right outside my window? They're sitting on the roof right outside my window. I've never had birds sit there. Maybe they want to learn more about Aubrey Gordon. Aubrey starts to talk about how the biggest threat to fat people's health is often the healthcare provider's profound bias. And she talks about how usually when a fat person goes to the doctor, instead of treating whatever that person came in for, it starts to be a lecture about weight loss. You know, because weight and health have absolutely nothing to do with each other. And being obese definitely isn't a risk factor for multiple disorders and diseases. At one point, Aubrey says that she didn't see a doctor for about 8 years because she was being treated so poorly. Here's a quote about the doctor's office that Aubrey gives us. She says, "You get on an exam table which might not hold you. The blood pressure cuff doesn't fit your arm. And then the MRI machine is too small. In a moment of crisis, you need the morning after pill, and you discover that it's not guaranteed to be effective over 155 pounds. Many medications are never tested on someone my size. Nothing is made for us. We are never expected. And I'm not going to go through and like debunk every single thing that Aubrey says, but since she just said like so much medical shit, I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. So I did some research, but I also think it like paints a picture of how humongous she is, which probably sounds awful. A typical exam table has a weight limit of 400 to 500 pounds. And there are special ones that are used at bariatric doctors that can hold up to 850 pounds plus. I looked up the length of an extra large blood pressure cuff, which is 40 to 55 centimeters long. I happen to measure my thigh, and my thigh is 59. And keep in mind, I'm 200 pounds. So if your arm is bigger than my thigh, then you won't be able to use extra large blood pressure cuffs. Like, that's ginormous. Typical MRI machines hold about 250 to 300 pounds, but if you're in a more populated area or you are seeing a specialized doctor, those ones can hold up to 500 to 600 pounds. I feel like everything she said is like fear-mongering. And then Aubrey says it's not guaranteed to be effective over 155 pounds if you take the morning after pill. And I looked it up, and this is about Plan B. It says, Plan B can be less effective if you are more than 155 pounds or have a BMI of over 30. There are no safety concerns for using it if either applies to you. The FDA hasn't made any changes to Plan B label or to its prescription recommendations because there isn't enough research to demonstrate a solid link between weight and lowered Plan B effectiveness. So if you're at or over the limit, you should still take Plan B, although there are other forms of emergency contraception that may be a better option. Just wanted to do a little education because I know sometimes we hear facts that fat activists say. I wanted to put some more context around those things, but I'm not going to debunk everything she says, but the medical stuff is very important to me. We have another quote that says, I used to work to make change in government by talking to voters and elected officials, and now I make that change through my writing. Aubrey Gordon is very important, if you didn't know that. Part 2, we're getting into mom, childhood trauma, stuff along those lines. Aubrey is making scrambled eggs in her kitchen and also some asparagus for her and her mother. Her mom says that when she was pregnant, her dad wanted to name her Mo, and her mom says that someone told her that Mo is Japanese for little peach, and she thought that was super cute. And then Aubrey goes, you know that's short for homosexual, right? And then her mom is like confused. And I think that sets the tone for the relationship she has with both of her parents for the entire film. So while they're eating, they're starting to discuss mom doing Weight Watchers in the 80s. The mom goes on to tell the story about when she was in Weight Watchers around that time, they kept emphasizing the importance of protein and for some reason eating liver. And because she felt so pressured to eat this liver and she hated it, she decided to cook it and put it in ice cube molds so that when it was frozen, she could take them like pills. Yes, that is a very normal behavior. I agree. They then start to talk about how Aubrey and her mom did Weight Watchers, the Atkins diet, and Fen-Phen together. Mom talks about how she actually really liked Fen-Phen, but it was taken off the market because it was starting to give people heart problems. Then Aubrey says, this is in quotes, I think you were the one that sent this to me, but it was research that was like the strongest bond amongst women happens when people are talking about how much they hate their body. While Aubrey is saying this, like the mom seems very confused and is acting like this is the first time she heard this information, and she's like, oh my god. Like, I almost feel like Aubrey's lying and saying that her mom sent that to her, because wouldn't her mom remember her sending that research to her? Aubrey starts to talk about how she's been writing this blog and it's starting to get a lot of attention, and says it's all about like basically being fat. And Aubrey is curious to what her mom thinks about this. Quote, just how that hits you. Mom admits to not reading her blog. Mom says it's very sad for her to read and is hard on her when she reads about how difficult it was for Aubrey when she was growing up and her family split. and she wasn't aware of how bad Aubrey was actually suffering. Aubrey says that she feels more affected by how her mom viewed herself, like how the mom viewed the mom, rather than how the mom saw her. Of course, making it very self-centered. Aubrey says something like, well, if my mom doesn't like herself, what does she think about me? Especially when I started to get even bigger than you. Mom is very obviously so uncomfortable during this conversation, and she's like fidgeting with a rubber band that was on the table. And the mom claims, well, that's just how it gets passed along. Kind of talking about the unhealthy behaviors. Now there are photos on the screen which were from around the time Aubrey was 11 and started going to different weight loss programs and fat camps. She says her stubborn body was unable to lose weight. During this time, she learned how to count calories. She had a food journal and started listing these other tasks that led her to have an ED and starting to resent food. Part 3, we're getting onto the online career, if you will. Aubrey states that she's been in Portland basically her whole life besides when she went to college. She claims it's hard for her to turn off her brain and to stop talking about such intense, upsetting topics that she writes about. So she often drives to let things settle and help escape her brain. So now she is typing on her MacBook Pro in the car, and she acknowledges that it's hilarious that she's a big fat lady with a itty bitty car. She starts talking about how it's important for her to remain anonymous, then shows all the bad comments she gets. Then there's a clip of her at a baseball game, and she talks about how it's fine that people know that she lives in Oregon because she knows that there's a lot of fat ladies that live here, so anyone could possibly be your fat friend. Now she's sitting at a picnic table in the woods, and she starts to show nice compliments. Then while there's like compliments on the screens, they're filming some random naked fat lady in the forest, and some of the comments say, "So grateful to have found you. I don't know you, but I'm proud of you. Thank you for speaking on our behalf." And now Aubrey goes to the library to work, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to comment on her appearance in this, but she looks fucking huge. And while she's sitting there typing on her laptop, there is a montage of her follower count going up, and then also articles she was featured in, and then kind of like celebs tweeting at her. Some notable ones was Monica Lewinsky following her, Jamila Jamil tweeted her, Gavin Newsom, James Gordon. I think it's very interesting that she's trying to align herself with a lot of left-leaning politicians or people associated with politics. And now she's back at her home office, and she says since she has started distancing herself from diet culture, she often laughs at how ridiculous it is. And she mentions that one of her favorite hobbies is to look up failed like music groups or bands from the 50s and 60s, and then she plays this song called The Worrying Way. And the song is basically talking about a worrying diet a woman is on, and she says she doesn't eat because she gets so anxious when her man says that she's going out with the boys, and but she really thinks that he's cheating on her, like, you know, some really mentally stable activities. And then Aubrey starts to show off her vintage diet book collection. It's not 4, 5, 6 of them. It's like literally a small library, probably more books than I've read in my entire life, but probably that wouldn't be a long list anyway. And it's just insane to think, like, she's just literally obsessed with dieting and diet culture and fatness and stuff like that. Like, I think it's kind of deranged. Like, it's what her personality is based off of, but you already know that. She starts to talk about how these diets are still prevalent today because diet culture just rebrands them over the years. And then here we have a quote. "They didn't fucking work in 1943, so why didn't they start magically working?" So when people diet, a few things happen, right? One is they lose a little bit of weight in the short term, they stop losing weight, and then they start gaining weight back after 3 to 5 years. Pretty much all of the available data we have shows us that upwards of 90% gain back, even more than when they started. This is like on the order of big tobacco levels of truly just lying to people. It is a real paradigm shift to look at someone my size or larger, she's already humongous, and rather than thinking, boy, I wish that person would put in some effort, thinking, that person has put in a great deal of effort, and that might be the reason, and that might have been what got them here. And I think it's just so ironic that she's talking about diets being like the tobacco industry, when there's been proof shown that when the tobacco industry started to become less popular, the scientists that worked with the tobacco companies were actually hired by hyper-processed food companies to make their products as addictive as cigarettes. But you know, that won't be talked about. So now she is visiting with her dad, and I just want to say, this is so goddamn awkward. And I know, like, probably these older people don't film themselves and, like, put themselves out there like how we do with YouTube and TikTok and Instagram nowadays, but it's like, it just felt like there was literally like no chemistry in between them. Dad says that he was a pilot for United Airlines, and he's flown over 25,000 to 30,000 miles. At one point, he flew to Sydney, Australia 3 times a month. So they're at this like hangar. I don't know if it's like a garage for planes or something. She says she's never been at this hangar, and she has not been on this plane since she was 15 years old. And I assume that is because she is way too fucking fat now to be on that little plane. But also we will come to learn that they did not talk until the last 8 to 10 years. Stay tuned for the tea, girls. And the dad says something awkward, like he's delighted to be her father, but then the dad starts to admit that he does not read any of the things that she puts out there, but he did take a look at the article about plane seats, and he thought it was interesting because, you know, that's something that he has to deal with on a daily basis. When he's describing her work, he's like, you know, like, I like the things and the stuff, and I appreciate her hard workingness. Dad says, I guess I should read more. Aubrey goes, well, yeah, that's up to you. And then the dad goes, but I appreciate it. Dad talks about how his partner was a flight attendant. We will learn more about her later. That kind of like scene is ending, and Aubrey starts reading a excerpt of her piece called What It's Like to Be That Fat Person Sitting Next to You on the Plane, which was released March 5th, 2016. And while this is like, while Aubrey is reading, news articles flash on the screen of her being featured in different articles, like kind of quoting the piece that she put out. Quote, my breath tightens immediately when the call comes. It's my boss's boss telling me there's an important meeting in another city, or maybe it's a friend inviting me to her wedding in California. Sometimes it's a family member whose health is failing and the time has come to say goodbye. I will have to get on a plane, and I am fat. Fat people have been shown on planes all the time. Loud, obnoxious, elbowing people, taking up space, getting Cheeto crumbs all over ourselves and you. Our whole existence designed to make you miserable. Personally, I've never seen a depiction of a fat person being on a plane. It's always like families or little kids being annoying and crying and being loud. I don't think I've ever seen like a skit of like a fat person on a plane. Let me know if you have. Aubrey starts to talk about how before her flight, while she's still at home, she'll practice how she will sit on the plane, and she tries to get a window, and she kind of like shoves herself in the corner so she doesn't touch the person next to her, and she says that she's so nervous about being on a plane that it makes her want to vomit. Part 4, online career is starting to... Aubrey says that a agent reached out to her to see if she would like to write a book. Flash forward to December 11th. Not sure if they don't really do a good job of saying when everything is. And she finally hears back, and of course she was approved because this film is basically just marketing for her book. And Aubrey starts to talk about how she is very scared to go public because she can't write a book under an anonymous name or like as a ghostwriter. And this is a life-changing moment. Aubrey starts to get ready because she's doing headshots, and I wanted to note that she was literally out of breath from walking to one side of the room to the other. If honestly, it was probably like a walk-in closet, and you could hear her breathing just by walking 20 feet. Aubrey claims that she is not much of a makeup person, but she feels it is fit to kind of get a little bit glam for these pics. Aubrey tells a story about how a photographer came into one of her jobs and everyone was getting headshots, and she claims that the photographer was acting really weird because they were taking so many photos of her, but they like couldn't get anything right. And Aubrey blames it on the fact that she was by far the fattest person there. And when she looked at the photos that the photographer took, she's like, well, that's what I look like. These photos are fine. Aubrey claims that people tell her she has really good skin and kind of takes it as a backhanded compliment. And she says something like, people only say that I have good skin because I'm fat and don't know how to compliment me because I'm fat. And in all honesty, Aubrey Gordon has like very nice skin, very beautiful skin. Like, I did not see a blemish on her skin the entire time. The person that is also taking her photos, which I assume is a woman, is also fat. Hashtag support local fat businesses. The photographer says something like, what do you want these photos to feel like? Like, what do you want people to think when they see you? And she says she wants to seem thoughtful because whenever she talks, it's like Muppet City. The film jumps to another day and she's sitting in her car and she's being very emotional. She says that she just had a very sweet but frustrating moment. She says that her dad invited her and family friends over to celebrate her book deal. Of course, she was trying to explain like what the book is about and stuff. Then she talks about how after she's done explaining like what her book is about, everyone starts to discuss the different diets and which ones actually work, like keto, paleo, low carb, etc. And you know, these people start to say like, you know, maybe this diet didn't work because I wasn't trying hard enough. And then Aubrey points out that all these people have been the same size her entire life and keep talking about how they need to lose the last 10 pounds, which was low-key shady. And personally, I think they were like trying to make conversation about her or like kind of talk about a related, like I feel like she's just taking everything in bad faith and, you know, they were trying to like relate to her or they thought they were doing a nice thing by having this related conversation. She starts to explain the irony, which is about fatness and how fat people are treated, and then the people at the dinner were talking about how to get less fat. She was sad, but now is kind of just pissed off, and the stuff she talks about, quote, doesn't matter which angle I take, it never can land. I mean, and I assume she's talking about like the family friends, saying like no matter, you know, like how she tries to explain anti-fatness and diet culture and all these things, no one else is starting to believe her rhetoric, which really makes her upset. She is not making the change that she so desperately wants to see. Part 5, we're just going to start talking about food, Aubrey's relationship. Aubrey goes to a library and rents a cookbook about mushrooms. She wants to, quote, get excited about foods instead of feeling shitty around every food, end quote. She decides on making this sweet and sour crab soup, and she goes to get ingredients from Jewel, or I think Wegmans is what it's called all around the rest of the country. It's called Jewel Osco in Illinois. Her sweater low-key looks like Neapolitan. So she gets her ingredients, and there are shots of Aubrey pushing the cart in front of this bread that says big, and then there's like a bunch of different clips of different diet foods in the store, like keto bread, detox tea, paleo flour, and we get this quote stating, everything about dieting puts you in this headspace of like, that's not for you, that's not for you, that's not for you. There's just like so much judgment around fat telling you, and other people are telling you not to eat. Your doctor is telling you to eat 500 calories a day. The same thing that are cause for concern in thin people are like required social performances. What doctor is telling her to eat 500? That's extremely disordered. Anyway, then she starts to talk about how this one time she was at the grocery store and she had a melon in her cart, and then some random lady goes to take the melon out of the cart and says, this has way too much sugar in it for you. It's not good for you. And then Aubrey says, she was like, it's a melon. What do you want? Who knows if that actually happened or if she just made up. Now we're back home and Aubrey is sitting down to chop vegetables. And I understand if you are disabled and you need to sit down and like do things, but Aubrey Gordon's whole personality is based around how it is so healthy to be fat when she can't stand a minute to chop an onion. Aubrey starts to talk about how people think all fat people must have binge, ED, and starts to talk about how to have Anna, where I'm gonna censor myself so we don't get in trouble here. To have Anna, one of the requirements is to have a BMI less of 17%, but if you have a BMI higher than that, there is a diagnosis called atypical Anna, which allows for a higher one. Aubrey claims that she has an ED, but doesn't say which one. I assume that she's implying that she has the atypical Anna. Aubrey talks about how she'll go all day without eating, but then feel like a failure when she needs to give in and actually does eat something. Aubrey talks about how she didn't talk about all of this for a very long time because doctors would say to her, "You don't look like you've missed a meal in a very long time," and also claims that healthcare providers laugh at fat people. Aubrey claims all of this is very hard to talk about because she still wants to seek treatment but is scared that it'll make things worse. Part 6, Thanksgiving. We are at Dad's house. He's in the kitchen preparing some sort of sweet potato casserole. He says he makes this every year but kind of like switches it up a little bit. There are so many cookbooks in his kitchen. I don't know, I was kind of like, is that where Aubrey gets it from? Like, is that why she collects them? And it kind of makes me think that her and her dad kind of like bond over food. Like that's the only thing that they have in common. And we're introduced to the dad's girlfriend, which is named Zach. She says that they've been together for 24 years. Zach was a flight attendant for Pam Ann, which is first class, very, very fancy. I wouldn't know. Zach claims that she started to become a flight attendant in her 20s, and when she started working, she was 98 pounds. And this is like the 70s. There's pictures of her on the screen. She says that back then, even if you were like super thin, you still had to wear a girdle, and her boss would come around every single day and pinch her ass and pull to make sure that she had a girdle on. She also had monthly weigh-ins and claims that this didn't bother her as much as other ladies, and a lot of other people kind of like struggled to stay in a certain size range. Zach starts to talk about how she taught Aubrey about skincare, facials, and they bonded over trying different cosmetics. Aubrey, you do have nice skin, bitch. Zach taught you how to take care of it. It's not just some backhanded compliment. Producer Jeanie is interviewing Zach about Aubrey's work. Zach says she, quote, loves how Aubrey describes being fat and big people. Aubrey keeps her on her toes and educates her about what's going on. Flash forward to the next day. It's actually Thanksgiving. Dad is sick and didn't come, but they are having Thanksgiving with family friends. And it's so odd because Aubrey is like by far the youngest person there. Like everyone is, I would say even older than her parents. I'm thinking like 70s, 80s, very elderly people. I know this is off topic, but I'm like, do you not have younger friends or family that come to Thanksgiving? Like it's just very odd, unless no one wanted to be in this fucking documentary. We get a little zoom in on her plate and she's drinking some red wine. And while they're eating, one of the family friends, who I think has a German accent, says, my friend gave me some good advice today I wanted to share. When you get home, make sure to set the scale back 15 pounds. And Aubrey does kind of laugh at that. So I don't know if she's playing it cool or if she actually did think that was funny. I thought it was very interesting to see her out in the wild and not be so vocal about her opinions, which makes me feel like the things that she says online is very performative, or maybe she's not as confident in her beliefs as she portrays. Because from my perception of Aubrey Gordon, if I thought she heard that, in my head, I would think she would have a temper tantrum. But she kind of just blows it off. And then with dessert, the same German lady says, 1 moment on the lips, 2 hours in the stomach, and 25 years on the hips. And Aubrey has no response to that, but it's also because she's talking to some old lady that's sitting right next to her. Then she starts narrating a piece called, quote, being better to your fat friend this Thanksgiving. And this was written on November 9th, 2016. So this was actually written before Thanksgiving. We have a couple quotes. This holiday, before you comment on how much you've eaten, the weight of your regret, your fears for the body you might grow into, your fears for the bodies around you, your anxiety about someone eating too much, stay silent for a moment. Sit with how it feels not to say it. Sit with what you wanted to say. Ask why you wanted to say it. Ask who it benefits. But more than that, remember that we're here to look out for one another. We're here to care for each other. As imperfect as that love may be, act as if both of our bodies are worth loving, or at least leaving undisturbed. Learn to find your deepest love for both of us. Lay down your arms, model the love you wish you saw around you, model the love you need. Part 7, we're kind of like going more into the career again. Aubrey is rewriting 10 pages of her book because the rewrites are due tonight. The editor wants Aubrey to add some more stats into the book, and she talks about, quote, according to the Global Institute Empowering Wellness Worldwide, the wellness industry is worth $4.5 trillion. Here's another quote. It's so weird to me that it's actually pulling folks in where they're like, it's not dieting, it's weight loss for wellness. And I'm like, but how do you do that? Do you change what you eat? Are you not allowed to eat a lot of things? Are you trying to lose weight? Then it's a diet. It's like they're trying to pull some Jedi mind trick, like, this is not a diet. Aubrey talks about how Weight Watchers has recently rebranded and has offered their program to teenagers for free. She says this next quote while smiling, which I feel like is very weird. And she's like, teens that diet are 18 times more likely to develop an ED. And she talks about how she thinks it's scummy for Weight Watchers to target children as new customers. Aubrey calls her mom to let her know that she's done, and mom is being very supportive and like says something nice, and Aubrey's like, good reinforcing answer. And I don't know, I just thought it was like very awkward use of therapy talk. The phone call ends, then Aubrey starts to explain the unreal feelings. You know, like she can't wait for all this to be an actual book and not just documents on her laptop. And then she starts to discuss like how she needs to start working on marketing plans, like tours, signing, flying in planes for months. You know, that's hard. It skips to another day, and I'm not sure who she's calling. She doesn't say who it's calling, and at first it sounds like a man, but then a bunch of other women start talking. I don't know, maybe she called someone and they were all hanging out, so everyone was passing around the phone because no one wanted to talk to her. Aubrey talks about how she wrote an article about Adele's weight loss, and the article was like, you know, Adele hasn't addressed her weight loss, so like maybe we shouldn't say anything about it, you know, like actually being of sound mind. And when she did post that article, a lot of her followers or supporters, you know, were really receptive to what she had to say. It sounded like Zach was talking at this point, and she was like, that is so fucking cool. And Aubrey talks about how Adele tweeted her and even DM'd her, and you know, she's like kind of fangirling and like giddy about everything. After getting off the phone, she almost like can't even appreciate the praise that she's gotten because she knows that it's gonna get a wave of hate soon because the article is kind of blown up and is going to reach the general public soon. While she's talking about this, I zoomed in on her whiteboard and it just had such weird things on it. Hold on, let me pull it up. I mean, she was like probably brainstorming or something, but it was so weird. I watched this film 3 times. You start to notice things the more and more you watch it. So it says fiction projects, and then the first title is sci-fi project, next one is fat villain, first person, the power of them, and then in parentheses next to it, maybe fat and queer. Next idea, fat asshole gets held accountable and grows. Another bullet point says queer/trans love story. Next one, fat rage story, the build and the blow up. And the last one says confidence vampires. So we'll have to see if Aubrey writes any of those books. So now we are getting a flood of the mean comments that people left her or tweeted at her about this article. It says, disgraceful fat fuck, show your face, coward, last warning, you keep on and we'll make sure you won't be able to type anymore. We'll find you. When they show comments in this film, like I feel like none of them are reasonable or like giving critique in a very neutral way. Like they just always seem so extreme. And obviously the people that are sending these insane comments like have a loose screw. I'll say nicely. Aubrey says, quote, you truly can't write or talk about people's body sizes without someone getting extremely upset, and that's very frightening, end quote, which is just golden. So Aubrey starts tweaking out about thinking about how someone could come to her house and harm her. But when she's talking about her fears of, you know, like someone breaking in or hurting her, like it's literally just so many different clips of her house, and it's like, if you are so goddamn scared, then why are you giving people all this information about where you live? And you know, she's typing at night in the front of her window with the lights on. She says that she's sitting duck, and she mentions that her house is on a corner and there's shots of her house, and Aubrey says that she is an easy target waiting to be hit. Then cut to a new scene where she is sobbing because someone actually doxed her or exposed her name, address, birthday, social security number, work. I'm not familiar with what platform this is on. I think it's Kiwi Farms. Aubrey says that people are doing this for sport. At this time when all this was going on, this was about 2 years after she started Your Fat Friend. So this was 2018 era. Aubrey says she, quote, doesn't know if someone is gonna come kill her, end quote. She doesn't want to give this any attention because she's scared that it'll fan the flame. She claims that there are no laws about this and she's feeling completely helpless. And then there's this weird quote about being useful, which I don't understand how it relates to being doxxed. She says, quote, you figure out how to make yourself useful. You figure out ways to like build up like a charm offense. You figure out how to just sort of disappear yourself. That's the only way I have existed in the world. Part of that is me stuff, and part of it is hard fucking signals from a lot of people a lot of the time. It's like, you're not wanted here. This is too much to make space for you. You're demanding too much. You're expecting too much. Why do you even show up to begin with? Aubrey says, like walking down the aisle of a bus and just watching every seat fill up with bags because no one wants to fucking sit next to you. No one wants to sit next to anyone anyway. Underweight, healthy weight, overweight, extremely, extremely overweight. Part 8 in our COVID era. Right now, it is currently September 2020 during the lockdown era. Aubrey says that she's feeling very isolated, even though she has a very great support system, and she had a little freak out and decided to get a dog, and she copied me and got a dog that looked exactly like mine. I don't want to say Tui's cuter. Finn is cute, but no one will be cuter than my Tui. Her dad comes over to install a deadlock on a door. This is the day before her book comes out, and she's low-key tweaking. So this is September 16th, 2020 now, and she posts something on her blog, quote, as I write this on the eve of publishing my first book and revealing my face to readers for the first time, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of what those trolls might do. I'm afraid of being hurt, being killed. On some days, I remember the remoteness of this possibility. On others, the fear of it consumes me. Now she is in a mall and she's going up an escalator in that Neapolitan ice cream sweater with a mask on. Her belly is hanging out, as it always is. The quote continues, I'm afraid of the responses from reading is starting to get hard. I've been doing way too much of it in this video. I'm afraid of the response from fat people, some thinking that I am not fat enough, others finding me unthinkably fat, some balking at ever having listening to me. I'm afraid of thin people too, afraid that they will use their response to my body to disengage from this urgent, important conversation. Some of those fears will come to pass, some won't. So now we're at the bookstore, and she says, so it's time for me to tell you who I am. I'm Aubrey Gordon. I'm 37 years old, and I weigh 350 pounds, which I think is a lie. I think her driver's license probably says 350, but people in the fat acceptance community or people like Aubrey don't own scales and don't weigh themselves very regularly. It's the next day, November 17th. This is the day of the book release, and she goes to her local bookstore called Powell's. She sees her book and she's taking photos, you know, like kind of celebrating, and you know, it is a really cool moment. Like I couldn't imagine what that feels like. I'll never be writing a book. Don't be expecting that from me. She reminisces about coming here so much as a child. She would get Shakespeare novels every year because she says that she would read them so much that like she couldn't see the words on the pages anymore. She also said that her first girlfriend had a book published here, and she keeps going back to the bookstore throughout the week and says that they sold out in a week. The producer asks if her family has read the books, and she says, I don't know, I'm not gonna ask, but she knows that they've all bought them. Aubrey says that her family can take the time to decide if they want to read the book or not. Then there is a montage of people giving her praise online, and most notably, a majority of the people giving her praise for the book are also fat people. Now she's celebrating the success with a Zoom hangout with her friends, and she's drinking this like giant thing of fancy bourbon. One of her friends says, it's not just a book, it's important, and the world's gonna be just like slightly better because of it. She says about a week later or so, a colleague named Michael reached out and pitched a podcast. which we now know as maintenance phase. They recorded 6 episodes together, and she gets on Zoom, and when he sees her, he's like, OMG, I like your makeup. Did you use like some sort of palette? I like that palette you have on. And she's like, oh no, it's just like literally one shade. I just thought it was so funny because she's always talking about how people give her backhanded compliments because she's fat. And she says that people don't know how to compliment fat people, so they always give like compliments about makeup or hair or skin, which then like this friend does. And she says the only time she'll try new colors or experiment with palettes is after she gets hammered. I don't know. I notice there's like a lot of alcohol. Now there is a clip of Michael and Aubrey recording, and Michael says, I was scrolling through the top 100 health podcasts. Very, very few of them were subversive or in any way skeptical, so I thought it would be a good idea to have a show that is curious about all this stuff. While he is talking, Aubrey is signing books and putting them in the free libraries in her area, which I thought was pretty cool. Then they start talking some misinformation about how the average US woman is above a size 14, 16, and then just a bunch of other stupid shit like how all people fail at weight loss. And she says, quote, we don't know how to make fat people thin in the long term, end quote. So now we're in our podcast era, and Aubrey is now at her dad's house, and they're grilling out. Of course, the girlfriend's there. They're having steak and a salad. It seems like every time they're together, they never have carbs, or I don't know, that's just an observation. And this is the first time that I've seen Aubrey drink water in a very long time. Aubrey talks to them about her podcast. She's like explaining it, and her dad's like, Zach has never listened to a podcast before. And you know, Aubrey's like going on and on and on, still talking about it. And her dad's like, Zach doesn't even know what a podcast is. And Zach is just like sitting there looking very confused, but is trying to be as supportive as she can. Then we jump to them recording the podcast again, talking about BMI, and then there's a clip of her walking her dog with a man that has a pink mohawk, which we're never introduced to, like, who is this man? Here's a quote. In 1998, the National Institution of Health changed the definition of overweight and obese, and they substantially lowered the threshold to be medically considered fat. So that was Aubrey talking. Michael says, oh, so like, how was your week? I became fat. Aubrey, if you can make more people medically overweight or obese, then you have a fuck ton more customers, not only on an individual level, but you've also got state contracts. Being a fat person, saying this into a microphone, like, here's what I researched and found, it's easy to read as a very self-serving set of conclusions. Michael, I was just gonna accuse you of glorifying obesity. Then I go in to talk about how the BMI is so harmful, especially for Black women, because the BMI was studied and created while researching cisgender white men. So now we have an audio clip of the podcast, and Aubrey is talking about how in the early 2000s there was like this huge push and people were starting to fear-monger obesity, and news crews would just go around filming fat people from the neck down for B-roll. And Aubrey says, quote, and I will say, during that time, I spent a good 10 to 15 years watching that B-roll, and I would often tear up watching because, oh, I might tear up now because I was looking for myself. Girl, what? Aubrey is sitting at the kitchen table with a water and a carton of blueberries that she is not eating. And she is reading comments people have left her. And this is from the B-roll newscast obesity fear-mongering podcast that we just heard. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your stories. A couple years ago, I was in the same situation and I caught someone filming me for B-roll and I flipped the fuck out on them. And then someone says, your podcast has helped heal my ED more than any sort of treatment I've ever done. And, you know, I've been suffering for 40 years with all these problems. I would argue she's probably still suffering if she's obsessed with maintenance phase. And then she's showing people sharing the podcast on her IG story and tagging them, you know, everything's like very positive. Aubrey's talking about how the podcast is starting to blow up. Like every month they'll get like just a huge skyrocket of listeners. Then she goes to CVS to get her COVID booster, and Aubrey talks about how the vaccine is less effective on fat people because the needle is not long enough to get to the muscle. What would you know? She gets there and is surprised the pharmacist actually knows how to do her job and is knowledgeable about needle length and knowing that she needs to use a longer needle for Aubrey's big fat arm. Her big fat arm is so fat, her arm has fat rolls. Then there's a little podcast clip of them talking, and they talk about how it's so amazing the pharmacist is doing their job, and jokes about how she probably listens to the Maintenance Phase podcast. It's almost like healthcare providers know what they're doing and are knowledgeable about the subjects they're talking about. And they don't need super morbidly obese Aubrey Gordon to tell them how to do their job. Aubrey starts to talk about how the podcast has won a Webby Award for the best podcast series in 2022. I feel like this is kind of like trying to give them some sort of credibility. She says she's told her family about the podcast and all these things, all the accolades that she's been getting, and they try to be supportive, but they don't really understand online culture or technology or like what it means to get 1 million downloads. Then it cuts to a scene where she's driving with her dog in the back seat, and they're going to the beach. When she's walking on this beach, her stomach is hanging out. I don't think it's very purposeful. Like, it's not like a crop top and her stomach hanging out. It's like the saggy part hanging out because her shirt's too short. So Aubrey starts to talk about how the podcast is receiving so many positive responses, and then she starts to spiral and talk about people being mean to fat people out of nowhere. She says, quote, "I feel like I'm in this weird moment where I'm like, people treated me like shit for a long time because I was fat, and now that I write about being fat, it's like people are like nicer about it. I don't understand that, and I feel like my whole life has been like, too loud, quiet down, too much laughing, and now people are like, no, that's good. I feel like I'm just a little like emotional whiplash kind of moment about it." I feel like she's probably being treated the same. It's just that she's probably just gaining more confidence because she is posting online. You're never bombarded with compliments and accolades if you are a normal ass person doing a regular job. Part 10, we are hanging out with Mother again, and I assume her mom lives far away because when Aubrey is visiting her this time, she's recording a podcast. So I assume she's staying for a long period of time, because if you were at your mom's house and she lives pretty close, then why would you bring all your fucking podcast equipment? They show a really cute clip of her and her mom while she was super young and they were swimming, and the mom was kind of like playing with her. It was really cute. And the mom says she has no photo albums, but she puts pictures up on her door. And then we see some pictures of her and Aubrey. Aubrey is now recording the podcast in her mom's closet, and she's looking humongous. In the background, there's this old ass scale, and Aubrey's whispering to the camera about how her mom was discussing her regrets yesterday as a parent and never thought about if it was working or not, and just kept doing new things to help her lose weight. Then her co-host Michael joins their Zoom to record, and she just like ends up changing the subject. Then it cuts to Mom, which I think is in her art studio or maybe a different room, and says that she's been painting for 2.5 years, and she says that she doesn't care if people like her art or not. The mom says that when she woke up this morning, she was thinking about the conversation her and Aubrey had yesterday. Like, why did I make Aubrey join Weight Watchers when she was only 13 or 14? She claims she didn't think anything would change, and her husband said Aubrey's weight was her responsibility. Mom tried to take action but didn't believe it would help. And then we have this amazing little interview with the filmmaker, Jeanie. Jeanie says, "Was there a moment where you noticed that Aubrey was becoming fat?" Pam, Mom, "Yeah, not fat exactly, but something like, I'm concerned. This looks like something we should attend to. She was in high school, her father has moved out, and we're going through this icky time piling on all these things that are hard." Jeanie, "Did you think there was a point where she would lose weight and become smaller?" Mom, "No, I never did think that." So the mom had no faith that Aubrey would ever successfully lose weight. Of course, because it's genetic to be 500 pounds. Just kidding. Her parents are probably literally half her size. Mom is rethinking her decisions and wish she would have asked for Aubrey's opinions or input on situations when she was forcing Aubrey to diet when she was younger. And the mom says she feels like Aubrey got something else out of the dieting in those situations that she didn't intend as a mother, and she just keeps expressing like so much regret about her decisions. Then we are back to Aubrey recording. They're talking about sleep. Aubrey says, I have an array of anxiety disorders, so it's just like anxiety and sleep. I'm surprised she doesn't have sleep apnea, but maybe she's just not disclosing that. Most humongous people have sleep apnea. We are back to Mom in the kitchen and says that they've been recording for a long time. It seems like Mom is kind of like still in her head, rethinking things. I was doing what I thought was best. Something about saying all these things out loud makes you see things in a different way. The camera just makes everything bubble up. I feel like her mom is overthinking and kind of spiraling about her decisions, and probably feels like Aubrey is the way that she is today because of her childhood. Part 11. Aubrey's birthday. We are back at Aubrey's house and she is showing us this beautiful painting her mom made for her, and it's all of Aubrey's favorite colors. And then now we're at the dad's house and the dad is cooking. He's making a steak, some salad, asparagus, I don't know. Here we have Aubrey sitting down to put parchment paper on a sheet pan. Aubrey talks about how her dad called her the other day and was like, how do I download a JPEG of your logo? Because I'm trying to do something and I can't figure it out because I'm 3,000 years old. Aubrey's like, obviously I know he's doing a little surprise for me, but I don't know what he's doing. Ding dong, someone is at the door and Aubrey goes and get it. She's literally waddling because she's so big, and it ends up being a cake delivery. Dad is now serving plates and emphasized when he handed Aubrey her plate of food that there is no sugar in anything. When he gives Aubrey a plate of food, he says, is that enough? They eat, Dad pops some champagne, and someone brings out the birthday cake. The cake is so cute. It's like this little circle cake. It has white frosting, and then in the center is a picture of her dog, and then the maintenance phase logo is on the edge. That is not something my parents could do, especially my mom. My mom can't even log in to fucking iCloud by herself. Dad says the cake is gluten-free and sugar-free, but tells Aubrey not to eat the top of the cake, like where the logo and her dog's face is, because when the baker tried to put the logo on, I don't know what it is, like fondant, or if there's like special printers that can like print an image on cake or frosting. They said that when the printer tried to put the images on the sugar-free frosting, it like bubbled up and got all fucked up, so they had to put regular frosting on the top, and the dad keeps telling Aubrey not to eat it. When the dad is talking about the cake being sugar-free and gluten-free, Aubrey was like, it didn't need to be sugar-free and gluten-free, but whatever, I'm not gonna get into it. Which is like kind of almost the first rebuttal that we've heard from Aubrey when it comes to, I don't know, like fat-phobic things or things I would think she would respond to when she hears people in her life saying things. They sing happy birthday, and after Dad says this is her first fiscally independent year. He's spilling tea or something. She goes, Jesus fucking Christ. Dad says, well, that's a dad's perspective. Some members of my channel and I were speculating that the dad probably has a lot of moolah, which we will discuss later. They eat the cake and Aubrey says her slice was too big. Dad says, you're taking this home and I don't care what you do with it. Now it's Halloween. Aubrey claims she does not like candy, but she is a candy enabler, and she wants to be the cool adult on the block, so she gives out full-size candy for Halloween. She had Reese's Cups and peanut M&Ms. Part 12, we're having a little moment with Dad again. We're back at Dad's house, but this time he is alone, staring out at the window, you know, I was about to say contemplating life. Maybe like just having a moment, you know, in his feels. He talks about how important this birthday was because Aubrey is now fiscally independent. He says, it's time we stop worrying about her and she needs to start worrying about us. He threw her a birthday party because it's a very big year for her. Obviously, like having to spend her own money and pay her own bills. But Dad hasn't always had the opportunity to throw her birthday parties because when him and Aubrey's mom separated, Aubrey did not talk to her dad until the last 8 to 10 years. So I'm thinking like they did not talk for like maybe like 15-ish years. Aubrey's dad basically admits he was pretty absent in her childhood because of his job. He worked so many hours being a commercial pilot, but then when he would come home, all of his days off would be used to recover. And he says that it's not a easy lifestyle to have with the family. Dad talks about his child. Dad says his dad, Aubrey's grandpa, was iron-fisted, demanding captain. So probably a huge abusive asshole. Aubrey's dad said he was pretty big in high school. Aubrey's dad, Rusty, says, I was like my dad and worried about losing control. Filmmaker says, Aubrey says she felt watched when she ate as a kid. Dad said, well, I was the one watching her. My dad watched me too, but obviously I didn't learn anything from that experience because Dad is still a little chubby. Now we are at the part 13 book event. Aubrey is discussing that the book event is in 2 weeks. She's really nervous to talk about this book because it includes a lot of vulnerable information. We have a quote from her that says, fuck man, that's my first time showing up to a place and being like, I'm going to be here in person. Whatever you want to do or say to me, come on and fucking do or say to me. And that feels really intense. A lot of the work is exposing a bunch of traumas, getting super vulnerable in super public ways. It's giving people a lot of roadmap for how to hurt me. Girl is paranoid. She says that people email her asking how she does it, and she admits that she is still struggling. And then there's like these really weird clips of her like in the dark and they're filming with flash or something. It's giving like horror movie. And then she talks about how she's planning the event and she wants to start the event with the Just Say Fat piece. And when she's talking about this, there is a video of her wearing a bikini in a pool or something, and the top is just like visibly way too small. Like it almost looks like a size large and she needs to be wearing like a 3-4X. And she knows reading the Just Say Fat piece is going to make a lot of people uncomfortable because the word fat makes people uncomfortable. So fast forward to 2 weeks and we're now at the event. The event was May 23rd, 2022. Is that 2 years after the book came out? Yeah, it is, because the book came out in 2020. So we see everyone setting up. There's a lot of people there. I would say like it had to be at least 150, 200 people. And this is still COVID time, so people are wearing masks, but they are close together, like sitting in chairs and standing up for the event. And she reads Just Say Fat. I'm not going to read it to you again because you already heard it at the beginning of the video. People clap. So Aubrey starts going on a little bit of a rant and talks about how anti-fatness, when people hear the term anti-fatness, a lot of people think it means self-love. But Aubrey states that no one can love themselves out of oppression. And she says when people try to love themselves out of oppression, it doesn't go great. I don't know if you've read anything called History, emphasizing how fat people were treated over time, but there's no historical events that I know of that are around being obese. So Aubrey's going back and forth with her co-host, which is Dan Casey. I don't think Dan Casey has any sort of social media presence. Maybe that's just her friend or maybe someone that works at the bookstore, because I tried to Google them and nothing came up. So they're going back and forth and the co-host is starting to fumble over their words. I don't know if they're nervous or just don't know what to say. And Aubrey says, we're fumbling and having a hard time coming up with what to say because we're trying to avoid cuss words. While they're talking, it pans to the parents and they look kind of awkward. Aubrey ends the event by saying, quote, the thing that moves people is not facts or figures or numbers. The thing that moves people is personal connection and personal stories, and that is it. Which is why you talking to your mom is more effective than me talking to your mom. That change happens most effectively when people don't feel super ashamed all the time. And when she said that, I was like, okay, then why is your podcast about debunking every sort of fucking scientific research and study showing that being obese is horrible for your health? If it's just about personal stories helping people. That little part of the event is over and we see Aubrey's parents and they're just so shocked about how many people came out. Aubrey's dad said he expected like maybe 50 people to come. Aubrey is signing books and doing like a little bit of a meet and greet situation type deal. And someone comes up to her and says, I read your book in the height of my ED and it helped change how I view things. Then someone else comes up and is like, I am an OGBYN resident at the local hospital and we're trying to make our space more inclusive. That acceptance has infiltrated the healthcare system. Another lady comes up, she has her mask on, she has a baby straddled to her. She says her baby's 2 months old and I'm here to see you, Aubrey, because I think you're so fucking awesome. Aubrey says something along the lines of like, I am just some lady who stays in the house a lot and walks her dog and wears weird outfits around the neighborhood, and I'm just so shocked so many people love me and support me. Her dad got so emotional. He was like kind of tearing up during all these things. Mom says that she's very proud of Aubrey and is happy that she's finally gone public. So while all this is going on, you know, we're showing B-roll of people, even though Aubrey was so triggered of the newscast filming her and accidentally being B-roll. We're getting fat, skinny, every size in between B-roll of different bodies that are there. And Aubrey says, it is a garbage world out there for fat people. And I'll tell you what, you don't do a whole lot better in this world than Pam and Rusty. They are a couple of people who can do the thing, who can go, oh, wait a minute, I'm not sure I got this right. Is that what you need? How about this? I think it's so funny that she claims to have the best parents ever when this whole documentary is basically about how they traumatized her for being on a diet. Now she hasn't eaten 3 million and she's 600 pounds. And she claims that not all fat people are so lucky to have supportive friends and family. Quote, fat people have spent our entire fucking lives changing to fit the world around us. You can be the person that we don't have to change in order to be with, right? You can be the one person who's like, it's okay, I don't care, what can I do for you? The end. So now my opinions. Are you ready? I just want to say, like, I do have empathy for Aubrey Gordon, and I do understand why she sees the world the way she does, but that doesn't mean that I agree with her. If that makes any sense. Like, I can put myself in her shoes. I don't know how to say this, but when I critique the things that Aubrey Gordon and other fat acceptance people say on the internet, I am critiquing the words they say, not the human themselves, or like the way they present themselves, or like just the way they are. And I know, like, I mentioned her appearance so many times and her weight in the summarization, but I just think it's so important to acknowledge those things because, to be honest, I think she is actually delusional about her weight and how much it affects her and her health. I mean, she doesn't actually like go in to disclose every single diagnosis she have, even though she did kind of like imply that she has atypical Anna, eye roll. But, and it might be just from personal experience that kind of like makes me a little bit triggered, but my dad at one point was 450 pounds, and just seeing like her stomach hang out like that, like it just shows that she is not aware how big she is, and just constantly seeing her stomach and like seeing my dad's stomach hang out like that as a child. I mean, my dad's was like way worse than hers, but just, I feel like it shows how unaware of how big she is. And I actually looked up her height. She is 5'10", so I mean, even though she did say she's 350, which I do not believe, she is pretty tall, so like her weight can be dispersed better than someone that's like super short. Just how she carries herself and just makes me feel like, I mean, I really think she doesn't have a good grasp on reality, but just her stomach hanging out and just hearing her repeat the same misinformation all the time, it just makes me feel like I'm literally in a different world than her. But we already know that so many people in the fat acceptance community are delusional. So from an anti-fat acceptance perspective, I think in the past I would have eaten this shit up. But I think this film came out last year, 2024, so I was well out of the fat acceptance movement when it was released. I do think it was very interesting to see the behind the scenes life of Aubrey Gordon, because a lot of fat activists have other jobs besides like the super famous ones. To see like what she's doing on a day-to-day basis, or you know, the writing and the events, I thought was very interesting. One thing that really stuck out to me was when she went to Jewel or Wegmans to get the ingredients for her soup, and you know, she's like sitting down chopping the vegetables. She was talking about how she wants to get better and to seek treatment, but in all honesty, I don't think she will ever be able to do that, because her personality, her life, her multiple businesses are all reliant on her disordered behaviors. Like, there is actually no way in hell she would be able to lose weight and keep the same perspective because Aubrey is someone that has been overweight her entire life. Obviously, now is probably the biggest. But when you're so big like that, and you're so big your entire life, I've been fucking overweight and fat my entire life. But I've lost 70 pounds now, so like, realizing how much easier my life has gotten since I've lost weight really makes me understand how having so much extra fat is horrible for you. And then her podcast host is like a super small guy, and it's like he doesn't know what it's like to be super morbidly obese either. So I feel like it adds onto the delusion that there can be health at every size, because he has no experience of being fat, and all of her experience is being fat. So they can't understand the opposing perspectives. Like, I think if Aubrey Gordon lost weight, even if she lost, I think she has to be like 400, 450. Even if she lost 150, 200 pounds, and she would still technically be obese, her life would change drastically. And I think if she was a healthy weight and she did seek treatment and she did get better, there is no way she'd be able to be doing the Maintenance Phase podcast, you know, the Your Fat Friend career on Instagram influencer bullshit, because everything that she does, everything that she says really reinforces a lot of toxic ritualistic behavior. Shout out to Graphically Alex, he always talks about that. But like, when you're in the fat acceptance community, they spew the same shit all over and over and over again, because not only are they trying to convince themselves that everything that they're doing is okay, they're also trying to reassure in other people that what they're doing is fine, because they don't want other people to get better. As we've seen so many times, when people leave the fat acceptance community and start to lose weight, people in the fat acceptance community get so pissed off and triggered, because deep down inside they know that losing weight is the best thing that they could do for themselves. Not to go a little spiritual woo-woo on you guys, but it's like, I think she would like have to have some sort of like ego death or like come to Jesus moment to realize how bad everything is, or how reliant everything is in her life around food and weight. You know, I'm someone that firmly believes that people can change at any time. I want the best for everyone, but of course, changing and doing better is easier said than done. And I think as we age, it becomes harder and harder to change, just because we have so much experience living in, you know, so much unhealthiness that we almost like don't know what it's like to thrive and actually be doing well. You know, Aubrey Gordon will be 42 in November. I don't think she's as big as people on 600 Pound Life, but it feels like I keep seeing news articles of people that were on 600 Pound Life that decided not to lose weight. They keep dying. They're not much older or younger than her. She is significantly larger than her parents, and it's fucked up to say this, but like, I wouldn't be surprised if her parents outlived her. Whether she likes it or not, whether she can acknowledge and accept it, being super morbidly obese, being that big is not healthy. No matter if you exercise, if you eat the right foods, it's not. It's just fucking not. And no matter what research she manipulates, I will not believe it. Because I've never been that big, but my father has, and his life was fucking horrible. Someone mentioned this in the comments on one of the members only videos. They're like, I wonder if the mom and her like bonded over food, or like used eating as some sort of like emotional coping mechanism because the dad was always gone, which I kind of agree with. I don't know, it's just kind of giving like spoiled brat energy. I just feel like watching this documentary kind of gave me a better idea of who she was and how she grew up and what made her the person that she is today. And I'm sorry, like, she'll be 42 in November. I understand having childhood trauma, because like I am someone with severe childhood trauma. Like, I have CPTSD from my dad being an alcoholic, and I know what it's like to be overweight as a child and dieting as a child and being overweight as an adult. I mean, I'm losing weight now. I'm still 200 pounds. I still need to lose 25 pounds just to be considered overweight and no longer obese. But it's just like, quite frankly, like, literally get over it. You are 42. You have been an adult longer than you have been an adult longer than you were a child. Are you gonna still be talking about how you had to diet as a kid when you're 50? Are you gonna talk about how horrible your childhood was when you were 50 years old? Like, it's just starts to become like, I don't want to say tone deaf or like you can't read the room, but it's like, what about your actions? What have you done to make all of the trauma in your life better. Of course, it's not her fault that traumatizing things happened to her or her childhood was the way it was, but it is her responsibility to get better. And unfortunately, I don't think that is something that she will do. I feel like saying that makes me a bad person, but I feel like that's literally just the truth. Another thing that just like pisses me off so bad is when she talks about how when other people want to lose weight, it's because they don't want to look like me. It just feels like she's centering herself in every single conversation people have when they're solely talking about themselves. Like, one of my friends goes on diets every once in a while, and I'm probably like literally fucking double her size. Like, she's a very petite woman, very small, and you know, when she talks about needing to lose 10, 15, 20 pounds, I don't think, wow, she would hate to look like me. I mean, obviously, most people with a functioning frontal lobe don't want to look like Aubrey Gordon, but I know when my friend says that she wants to lose weight, she is not thinking about me. Like, she is thinking about herself in terms of her health and, you know, what aesthetic she prefers herself to look like, and you know, the world around her, and you know, the eating behaviors that she's struggling with, or needing to start exercising again because she stopped going to yoga. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't always have to be about comparison. Like, we all live in our own world, and how she talks about that just makes me feel like she almost needs to be a victim, or she just needs to constantly hate herself or like feel insecure. So she's always comparing herself or making it seem like someone is talking about her or not wanting to look like her when really the conversation has nothing to do with her. Like, I'm on my weight loss journey, and I mean, I don't want to look like her, but that's not the reason I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight so I can be a healthy weight, and I would like to have children soon, and it's really dangerous to be obese and have children, and I don't want to pass down my unhealthy behaviors onto my future children. Most of the time when people want to lose weight, it's not because they are hyper-focused on not wanting to look like someone. Like, the world doesn't center around you. I was just about to be so mean. Even though you probably do have a very big gravitational pull. So, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I did some reactions and I posted them to members only because they were copyrighted, and I didn't want to get on YouTube's bad size. And one of my members left this comment. I won't say her name because I don't know if she wants that out there. But this is another critique of Aubrey that I have as well, and my member says, Aubrey seems like someone I'd find a lot of common ground with on so many issues, reproduction, LGBTQI rights, etc., but she's always focusing on the external realities of being fat, like the embarrassment that fat people experience as a result of being fat, but never the internal realities like the physical discomfort. I'm what they call a small fat in the fat acceptance world, but I've been smaller, and for me, being smaller and wanting to lose weight, again, isn't necessarily about the social validation, but also feeling less discomfort in my back and my joints. I hope to lose more weight at some point. I know Aubrey has talked about having so much anxiety and like different anxiety disorders and stuff like that, and I understand having social anxiety. I do struggle with that, especially like, you know, after you hang out with someone and you go home and you're like, fuck, I shouldn't have said that. Or you just like replay scenes over and over and over again in your head, but the people that you hung out with aren't even thinking about what you said, and you're just hyper-focusing on it for no reason. It just feels like she is so consumed with what other people think about her. She almost lacks some sort of actual true confidence, because, you know, if she did not actually give a flying fuck about what people thought about her, she would still go swimming because she loves swimming so much. All of these different articles she puts out, and now this film that she was in, is always just talking about how fucking horrible it is to be fat because of how people treat you, but not how bad her life is because she is so big. And I feel like because she's always constantly talking about how bad people treat her, she doesn't have to acknowledge the actual suffering that she is dealing with. Like, she's always pushing the blame onto someone else. To go back with like what my commenter says, it's like, you know, I feel like I have a lot of common ground with her, and I started reading this one article that she posted on for Thanksgiving, the one I kind of like read a blurb about, and you know, obviously I know that they picked out the most extreme quotes to be in the film. You know, in this letter she was talking about how she went to a family dinner and someone was joking that, here, The dishes began to make their way around the table. I helped myself to a spoonful of mashed potatoes. You should start with the salad, said the friend's aunt, and maybe finish with the salad. Just a salad for you. She laughed, taking the bowl from my hands. Like, that's shitty. That's horrible. That person shouldn't do that. And just forcing Aubrey to eat a salad during Thanksgiving isn't going to change her life. It's not going to remove so much weight. I do understand that people treat fat people poorly, and I acknowledge that there can be assholes in the world, and I do have empathy for her being in these weird ass situations, but it's just the lack of accountability or ever doing something about her life and how she feels just really frustrates me. Like, I know she wouldn't lose weight because she's talked about numerous times about how her body is stubborn and, you know, it's okay to be fat and stuff. But it's like, if being fat is so motherfucking horrible because of the way people treat you, like, why don't you do something about it? There is something that you can do, but you refuse to do anything because you are so delusional, thinking that you have absolutely no control over your weight. If that wasn't bitchy enough for you, I have a little section in my notes that says gossip bitch section. The first point says, it seems like her whole entire life is centered around food. And I don't know if they did that on purpose because fat people aren't allowed to eat foods or enjoy foods, but I just thought it was very telling. She talked about so many times about how she struggles with food and eating, and she feels so guilty enjoying food, and she is atypical Anna, so she restricts herself so often, but she's eating in almost every single clip, or every single family event, or every single time she's hanging out with someone, she's eating. And I understand that there's only so many places that you can film in public or activities that you could do with other people because, you know, if you're filming in public, you don't want to capture other people's approval, make people sign paperwork. But if your life is so fulfilling and you actually are doing other things besides binging all day, I feel like that would be shown more in the documentary. Like, her and someone could have walked the dog together. Her and her mom could have painted. Like, there's just so many other activities that they could have done, but it just seems like food is the center of her life. But I feel like you and I already know that because she is super morbidly obese. I am just still hung up on her dad talking about her being physically independent. Couldn't really show you guys that much of her house, but she's a nice ass fucking house, and she lives in Portland, which is a very expensive town to be living in, or city. I don't know how big it'd be considered, but I know it's fucking expensive up there in the Northwest. People were like discussing in the comments for my reaction videos, and someone wrote, I bet her dad was supporting her before she started making money with her podcast and books. It's very common for financially privileged people to work for nonprofits because the meager salary they make is supplemented with family money. Like, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he helped her buy that house she has. The 1980s and 90s was peak time to be a pilot from a financial perspective, and he probably had plenty of money to give her. And then someone replied, 100%. This woman lives in the Portland area and lived on a nonprofit salary without mentioning working any other jobs. She's definitely got family money. I typed in Google, what was the salary for pilots? And it seemed like if you were like the main pilot, which I assume he was because at the time he was older in the 80s and 90s, like he wasn't just some rookie that started. I assume he started flying in like the 70s around the same time that his now girlfriend was a flight attendant. And online said in the 80s, pilots were making around $100,000 a year. And I converted that to money, like in today's standards, and that's over $330,000 a year. Money, 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 money. And I don't remember when that birthday was, but she was in her late 30s and her parents were still giving her money. Or I guess her dad was giving her money. Like, I don't know, that just like blows my mind. Like, I can't even imagine what it would be like to just work for fun and work for nonprofits and knowing that you'll be able to survive off of your trust fund or something. Last bitchy thing, putting all these different timelines together of her not talking to her dad until the last 8 to 10 years. And then how long her dad and Zach were together, and then when her mom and dad got divorced. I feel like her dad had an affair with Zach, but obviously they stayed together. Like it wasn't just like a little, and he decided to actually divorce Aubrey's mom. I feel like she had a lot of fucking resentment for him, and I don't know if maybe that sort of trauma is enabling her to feel the way she does or eat the way she does. You know, I don't think I saved you any time talking about this documentary because this video is probably 3 hours long, and I think the film was like maybe an hour and 30 minutes with credits. My notes were 25 pages long. I felt like I was back in college writing this. So if you actually want to see the film yourself and you don't want to give Aubrey $12, I will have my channel members linked down below so you can watch my reaction. You know, it kind of feels like you're hanging out with a friend. Let me know your thoughts are down below. I would love to hear them. You know, opinions are like buttholes. Everyone has them and they all stink. And I love reading that stink. So be a bitch down in the comments, okay? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like this video. And if you enjoy me, consider hitting that subscribe button. I hope you have a great day. Take care. Peace.